welcome for this new episode. And today is my great pleasure to introduce Severine Menem. Severine is a very well-established nutritional therapist based in London, and she's a specialist of women health and in particular menopause. How are you, Severine?
I'm great, thank you, Lucas. Thank you so much for having me.
That's great indeed, because women health is a very broad and very interesting subject. And I think many people would want to learn how to particularly look after their own hormones. And particularly, we're talking about women here that maybe are approaching, their mid to late 40s. And what are the best strategies for keeping fit, for being healthy, for feeling good? And it's very good to talk to you, because indeed I know that you cover this space very, very, very well. But first of all, I would like to ask you, what is your journey up until now, and why did you decide to specialize in nutrition and in women health in particular?
Okay, do you want my whole journey or a shortcut of my journey, because it's quite long?
Very nice. So let's start and see how it goes.
Okay, so basically I was always into food. I am French, and food in France is very important. So I cooked a lot with my grandmother. But it was more important for me because I was an overweight or perhaps obese teenager. So my mom always sent me to see dietitian to lose weight. But, apart from the session, she wouldn't do any of the cooking, and I wasn't allowed in the kitchen. So it was a bit of a disaster. But fast forward a few years after that, in my mid-30s, I completely burnt out. I was working in finance and, a very stressful environment. I didn't manage my stress level. I didn't look after my health. And at some point, I just completely burned out. And I decided to quit and to start looking after my health. What I did is I tried to see I went to see a GP. The GP said, it's just stress, just wait a bit, it's going to get better. It didn't. So I persevered. I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, which was a big, big revelation for me, because finally I had a name. I was normal. It wasn't just in my head. And from there, I realized, what can I do? Because from my understanding, from the GP's understanding, it's just once you have hypothyroidism, you have it for life. So you take hormones. It's very common, but, you still have to take hormones for life. And seeing my father having to take medication every year and more medication, because sometimes, when you take medication, there is a side effect, then that was a bit of a problem. So my strategy at the time was, okay, fine. So now I know what's going to happen. I know why I'm like that. I know what's going to happen. Let's try to minimize, the amount of hormone I have to take so that I don't really have to rely on them. And that's when my real journey about nutrition started. So I read a lot. I started to experiment with food. So I read there was a link between gluten and what I had, and so on and so on. So basically, I worked really hard on the nutrition. I started exercising regularly. I started looking after my stress. I started sleeping better. Everything that everyone is telling you about lifestyle and how lifestyle changed your life. But basically, it did. Because within 3 years, I went from hypothyroidism to hyperthyroidism because I was taking medication. So I had to stop medication, obviously, because I had heart palpitation that was so weird. And ever since, so within 3 years, I had to stop medication. And ever since, I never had to take hormones anymore, thyroid hormones or any hormones, actually, not even to get pregnant, to stay pregnant, or after pregnancy, which is very common. And after realizing that, for me, it was an eye-opener that nutrition and the proper lifestyle can actually heal. I know I'm not supposed to say that because I know the nutritional therapists were not healing, but it happened to me. That's my experience. So I will say that. And that's when I decided I wanted to retrain as a nutritional therapist to help people with chronic conditions. And when I started, it was just about weight loss. I don't know why I attracted people who wanted to lose weight, which is fair enough, because sometimes it's just, the starting point, and then you can tell them, there is a lot more that you can do to lose weight, can get healthy and so on. And after a couple of years, I realized my clients were all women. They were all, mid-30s to up to 75 years of age. And and they wanted to lose weight, but there was more than that. You know, they were looking after health. And that's when I realized, okay, that's my calling. That's what I want to specialize in. And that's what I'm doing at the moment. And I'm calling it menopause because that's usually, you know, the start when women have started having hormonal changes. And so that's the start of menopause. It's just like menopause in a big word, but it's perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, basically.
So in your opinion, what
Yes.
are the main challenges that ladies in particular face with regards to harmonizing and balancing their hormones so that they can, keep fit from a hormonal standpoint?
Okay. So, so the challenges is like women don't have stable hormones throughout their cycle. And so on top of everything else, there is something happening to them. So that's why I think they have to be even more what would you call that?
Mindful, yeah.
Mindful, yes. They have to go, I would say, even stricter, or they have on one side to listen to their body, because I think their body is always right. But on the other hand, they have to learn how to work with their body to achieve a kind of peace of mind in the body, if it makes sense. So they can't just do something one day and expect it to have no consequence. You know, usually when you have a bit too much sugar, you know, that has an impact on the insulin, and then that has impact on other things. So that's why I think it's very challenging and great to be a woman at the same time.
Absolutely, yes. And when I think of hormones myself, I always look at insulin first, because insulin being such an important hormone, we can even call it a master hormone. We know that when insulin is high or low, that can upregulate or downregulate other hormones, including growth hormone, for instance, including glucagon. That can have an impact on your fat versus lean mass, etc. And one of the things that I'm always concerned with is stress hormones as well, because of course in modern lifestyles you have ladies particularly trying to juggle both high profile careers, or at least, you know, having a full-time job, and also, you know, sort of managing the family at the same time. So the stress hormones are there definitely, and they need to be managed. And then we have insulin, and that's directly linked to the way that you feed yourself. And on top of it, you mentioned just now the cycle and the sex hormones that need to also be supported. And even on top of it, you have so-called endocrine disruptors. So you have so many toxins coming from the environment that can be a real burden also on the endocrine system.
Yeah, exactly.
So in your opinion, in a nutshell, what would be a good strategy for ladies in particular, but anybody that have a modern lifestyle and they want to take care of their hormones? What would be sort of like, in a nutshell, some short advice for them?
I love your question. So I'm going to share everything that I do on a regular basis with all my clients. I always start with hydration. For some reason, nobody is ever hydrated properly. I've never met one new client who had a proper level of hydration. So, you know, hydration impact on the mood, on the energy levels, on sleep, on lots of things. So we start with hydration. Then we start on, we work on blood sugar levels, not to have the roller coaster. So it's basically not fixing insulin, but just making sure it's not too high or not too low, so that with stable blood sugar levels, we can start feeling great and starting working on it. And then it's working on the adrenals that would have a direct impact on the thyroid. And then you can work on the other glands. But that's usually how I start.
And okay, with regards to menopause in particular, instead, I mean, what are the main challenges related to menopause, and what advice can you give people?
Okay, so by menopause you mean perimenopause, the time where you have the most symptoms, isn't it?
Yes, they all phase, so to speak.
Yeah, they're all phases, but The thing is, menopause just lasts for one day, and so you can't really advise stuff for one day. So it's more the perimenopause, the period leading to the actual one day where you call yourself menopause, that has a lot of issue, and it lasts from 4 to 10 years. So that's really what I'm working on. So with regard to that, the weird or the good stuff is like women tend to mistreat their body for a long time and get away with it because the body is extremely resilient and can deal with a lot of, I want to say shit, sorry about that.
That's okay.
But can deal with a lot of bad stuff basically. But then after a while, you know, the body is like, you can't get away with that anymore, you know, you can't do that. And then the hormone starts going all over the place and very randomly. So you can't really rely on a certain cycle. Some women have been able to do that up to a point, but now it's no longer. So what I found really useful is to start looking after the health from the habits point of view. And because relearning to live properly, you know, with less sugar, with less stress and so on, start with doing a lot of things. And then you add the supplements. Because the problem, if you start with the supplements, is like you tend to rely on the supplements and not do anything at the same time. And there is so much supplements that you can take. You know, you're not like a pharmacy popping pills all the time. You know, personally, I don't think we're meant to have supplements or medication for life. It's great to have some at some point to help because we need that. And then, you know, fix whatever we need to fix on the personal side of things, and then move on, and maybe do take supplements, you know, every quarter. I don't know, it depends, but not just rely on that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. My view on supplements, first of all, I like to say that, of course, there are different nutritional practitioners and different theories in nutrition.
Yes.
With regards to supplements, I like to give supplements for a brief short of time, a period of time. So when we are working on something which is specific and limited in time, then supplements can really give people a boost. But on an ongoing basis, I also try to, you know, recommend good quality nutrition, proper relaxation strategies, as well as physical activity. And also, since I moved to Copenhagen, I was able to appreciate a lot more, you know, the spiritual side of the being, which is something that most people, particularly in cities like London, New York, etc., tend to overlook a little bit. Yeah. So what happens is that we are very much geared towards material success, which is great, you know. So we want very good houses, big cars. We want to have very nice careers, being very intellectually stimulating what we do on a day-to-day basis. But then, you know, sometimes it comes to the end of the week and we feel a little bit depleted or a little bit low. You know, I know people that are very successful in many ways, but then they're missing something still. And what they're really missing, I think, is a bit of a connection with a higher part of ourselves. It doesn't have to be belonging to a institutionalized religion, although that's fine. Yeah, it's more like having time to play, time to, you know, reconnect with nature, time to maybe experience state of flow. This is, you know, time to maybe play with art as well, or play a musical instrument. Anytime that we can sort of connect with our creative side, that's a spiritual experience, in my opinion. And that's what I always try to inspire people to do, is to also look at their creativity, their inner child, and their spiritual side. Very nice. So can you explain what is the process? Let's say that a friend of mine is a lady. She's 45 years old, and she's working, you know, full time, and also she's married with one kid, and she's starting to experience some new symptoms that are kind of, you know, unexpected or in a way.
Yeah,
and
always
you
random.
Yes, and so this lady wants to connect with you. How do you work with people like her?
Okay, so basically we always start with a conversation, like a video call, like we're just having, just to make sure that I understand what's going on and what she's trying to achieve. Because some people, they don't want to have a life overhaul, you know, they just want to take HRT to fix the problem. And I'm okay with that. You know, I can always help the people who wants to change the way they eat, the way they live. And so that's why we have this conversation. It usually lasts for an hour. And I explain my program, how I can see myself helping this person. And then if she agrees that it's the right thing for her, then we start working together. And I tend to work between with a program. I always work with a program because I want committed clients. So I ask them to commit to working with me for 3 months or 6 months. It depends on what they really want to work on. And we meet on a regular basis, usually every other week, so that, in between they can apply what we've discussed. We do it one step at a time. It's in no rush. It's just going to the right direction, and we're building the habits one on top of each other. So it might not seem a lot, but they can feel the difference straight away, and they keep the motivation high, and it works basically. So that's what matters.
Very nice. And what are the main symptoms that people come to you with regards to menopause?
Well, to be honest, usually they come to me because they want to lose weight. And then when I have this first conversation, I say, okay, fine. So how old are you? So, and then I can see, what's going on. And then they say, oh, so would you have this type of symptoms? Because, menopause, you have many symptoms. There are approximately 40 common symptoms. So I hint, do you have that and that and that? Because our menopause, mental, and random, that what seems to be random symptoms, and they say, okay, fine, I can definitely help you with a weight loss, but you have to be careful that you're entering in this period, because most of the time they're not aware, they are on the way to this, and say, okay, so yeah, I can help you with the weight loss, but you have to be careful how you do things now, because you are effectively going to prepare your body to perimenopause or menopause. And the more prepared you are, and the better your lifestyle habits, the easier it's going to be in terms of symptoms, meaning, the less symptoms you're going to have, and or the less the intensity. So so it's very important that you are careful on the way you want to lose weight.
Very nice. So I remember a couple of symptoms myself. The hot flashes, obviously. Yes. Putting on weight can be there. And also I remember just mood swings, right?
Yes,
People
exactly.
Can get...
So hot flashes, it is estimated that 3/4 of the women will have hot flashes. Weight gain, yes. Apparently, you're supposed to only put on 3 to 4 kilos for the whole 10 years period that is leading to the menopause, which is not really what women are doing. And mood swing, yes, it's a typical women thing, but I think it gets worse. So working on the blood sugar balance really helps on that. And then you've got other things to do, obviously.
Very nice. And with regards to menopause particularly, I mean, do you tend to recommend quite a bit of physical exercise, or is it more like moderate physical exercise?
Well, it starts where they're coming from. If I have a client who starts with asthma and she says, well, actually, just walking triggers some breathlessness, I'm like, okay, fine. So for her, it's about getting her to a place where she's comfortable just walking, and then we increase the intensity and then find other stuff. But physical exercise, or I would call it functional movement, at least, is what we're meant to do. So I cannot just say, okay, we only look after the diet. The physical aspect is physical activity actually is very important too. But it depends on where they are, where they want to be, and whether they like or not physical activity, because you would be surprised, but a lot of people hate exercising. Actually, we're so bombarded with messages, we have to, and then that sometimes we're just like, so I have to just like find a way to introduce it so that they enjoy it, and then they feel the difference, and they want more of it.
And with regards to nutrition, is there any nutritional model that you tend to follow, or any kind of diet, or what? I mean, just from talking to you, I understand that everything is highly personalized. Yes. Yeah. So it's difficult also for you to generalize possibly, but is there any kind of like a dietary model that you like, or any general guidelines around food?
I always start the same way. The plate that we learn, where half of it is fresh vegetables, a quarter is proteins, and then you've got a bit of carbohydrate in the form of either starchy food or grains. So I always start with that. With most women, I found that they are bloated after lunch, and that's probably because of gluten. So I recommend to reduce or cut gluten. And when they are gluten intolerant, then usually there is a link with dairy intolerance. But I go this three way. First, I try to rework the plates in that way to reduce or remove all the snackings, and then move to gluten-free and maybe dairy-free. But sometimes they don't need to go that far. It really depends where they are. And then, you know, we've got ideal stuff like intermittent fasting and stuff. That's going way too far. It depends, you know.
Yes, so it really depends indeed on people's lifestyles, and you tend to work with ladies that tend to have quite busy lifestyles as well. And one of the challenges that I always have as a nutritionist is that it's difficult sometimes to make sure that clients are compliant.
Oh, yes.
So if I give them, you know, a nutritional plan to follow, if I can achieve a 60-70% compliance rate, is already pretty good. And so both on weight loss or other types of programs that they might be on. Yeah. What I find it's a lot easier for some people, it's to skip a meal rather than to change or reduce the portion of the meal. And that's why I do sometimes use intermittent fasting, because for busy people particularly, having to plan 3 meals a day can be a challenge, you see. So I always say it's easier to plan 2 meals a day that are healthy and balanced than 3 meals a day that are healthy and balanced. That also saves you time. So of course, depending on different sort of predispositions and specific characteristics, some people might do better or worse on intermittent fasting, but it is something that I tend to discuss with people. On the whole food, on the full nutritional sort of 3 meals a day plan, I tend to just bring people back to whole food as much as possible. So my first step is to get rid of anything which is processed or adulterated or coming from a factory, and also trying to cut back on sugar. These are the two things that I always do first. And then I tend to help the client refine the diet, you know, like slowly, little by little, because again, compliance, particularly on full food programs, is really a challenge. And I feel like people need to be very motivated in order to particularly go through the first week or two of programs. Then they get used to it. But so particularly with menopause, again, there's no specific nutritional requirement, just clean food, just food that is more in line with people's predispositions and just lifestyle, right? Anything else you can add to it?
Well, there is a lot that can be done, but for me, it has to start with the basics. So we start with that, we see how they feel, and then what needs to be done on top of that. Because you've hit, you know, the thing is compliance. You want to take them to a place where they comply to what you suggest. So if you say, even if you tell them that's the perfect diet for you, that's a perfect thing that is going to sort everything out, if it's too far from where they are, then it's never going to work. Or it's going to work like one day, maybe 1 week, and that's it. It's going to be too far. So that's why I take them very step by step. And that's why, you know, on my plan, there is usually like 3 things. And it's not much, but it's sufficient for them to comply. And I know it's very slow, but it does bring results. So that's how I deal with compliance.
Yeah, and also it's very important then to work with a client long term, right?
Yes.
So typically, how long do you work with a client for?
Well, it depends, but usually it's between 3 and 6 months. And with some clients, they renew for another year so that they are 100% sure that not only we meet their goals, but also we stabilize at their goals. You know, they have this, they think that by meeting me like once a month, once everything is finished, you know, they can finalize some things and keep it going. And yeah, that's perfect. That works as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you mentioned, you know, that of course you take care of their lifestyle as well. In terms of a relaxation strategy, I mean, what are your things? How can you help people relax a little bit or find time for themselves so that they can sort of check out from their madness of the day-to-day life?
Yeah, well, that's the most challenging part, actually. You know, how to help them decrease the stress and increase the enjoyment of life. Most of them have families, so it's about finding a time to have quality time with their family, their children, and also maybe find hobbies again, which often, you know, when you get into your career, you just like remove the non-essential just to find time for the work and for the family. Everyone is really different, but this is something that actually some people that just don't want, they're not interested in. So if they're not interested in finding hobbies, then it's about, you know, reducing stress to a minimum so that they can enjoy whatever they're doing.
Yeah. So for me, the first thing I always recommend people is to do a very slow type of yoga, like a yin yoga or restorative yoga, because it takes very, very little effort from a physical perspective. So you just, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a yoga class where you hold the postures for maybe 5, 6, 7 minutes. Postures tend to be supported by props, so that it takes a little while to get into it, but then you can completely let go and be with it. And that is one of my favorite types of yoga because it really works on the parasympathetic nervous system, whilst more physically demanding types of yoga can work on the sympathetic nervous system. And they're great, of course, but you need a higher level of fitness and more energy to start with. Because, you know, if you do the standard vinyasa or even stuff like Ashtanga, etc., that's more of like a hard physical exercise. So in London, I'm sure there are lots of classes of yin yoga and restorative yoga. Another thing that I really like to always recommend is practices like Qigong and Tai Chi, because again, these involve lots of presence. You make very slow and very deliberate movements with the body, which are great. So it's a way for you to move, but also relax and work on the parasympathetic nervous system. And then for people that are open to it, I have great meditations, but, you know, meditating the standard way, like in cross-legged position, and it's very difficult. You know, you need to be more of an advanced, but it's not very difficult, but, you know, it takes a little bit more effort, particularly when you are already quite a bit stressed. So I always recommend lying down type of meditations with music and a sort of, you know, guidance. And it's something that I like particularly, something called yoga nidra, which is again is a type of meditation that induces the body to go in a state which is in between asleep and awake. These things are great because they really give the mind a bit of a break, and they regenerate you so much. And you know, they are kind of they are very good for beginners too. But of course, you know, relaxation is really difficult to achieve sometimes in modern lifestyles.
Yeah. So do you have
And
sorry, I was
yeah.
just you're right. I mean, I this is a type of thing I suggest, but I can hardly recommend because I don't have the resources, you know. And now everything is locked in London. I mean, not locked, but not really reopened. Do you do like online classes or online videos that I could recommend to my clients?
Sure. I have many friends here in Kopangan. So for your clients, they must know that I'm based in Kopangan, which is a Thai island. It's a beautiful place with, you know, it's still a beautiful, like typical island with the beach around and the jungle in the middle. Yeah. And here I live in a special place, which is called Sri Tanu. It's a yoga village. So we have over 10 yoga schools here. We have wellness centers, including the Smiley Retreat, which is my own wellness center I opened in January. And we, you know, this place is really very, very good because we attract lots of different type of teachers, therapists of different sorts, and some of them also provide online courses. But I have many sort of friends and sort of colleagues here that do different things. So later maybe we can we can connect on that side as well. Well, Severine, thank you very much, you know, for spending a little time with me today and just introducing yourself. And hopefully we can motivate some ladies to start taking care of their hormones a little bit more, and particularly if they're approaching a perimenopausal age, they are at least aware of what is going to come, and also maybe they can sort of, you know, learn some strategies to take care of themselves through this very crucial period of time.